What's up guys, Nick here from Nick's Reptile World, and today I want to talk to you guys about gargoyle geckos. So first let's talk about what is a gargoyle gecko. Well, they're scientifically known as Rhacodactylus auriculatus. These guys actually share a very similar gene pool to that of the Leachianus gecko, the Chahua gecko, the crested gecko, the rough-snouted giant gecko, and the Ceras. So the reason why these guys are actually called gargoyle geckos is because on the top of their heads they actually have, I don't know if you can see it, but they have these little notches at the top. So one right here, one right here. Kind of resemble horns almost, like a gargoyle statue in like Gothic architecture and stuff like that. On average, the gargoyle gecko gets to roughly 8 to 10 inches in length. They usually weigh between 35 and 60 grams, and they live anywhere from 15 to 20 years. However, it's not uncommon for these guys to actually live up to 30 years. In the wild, gargoyle geckos actually consume a diet that consists of fruit, plant nectar, crickets, and locusts. Let's talk about sexual maturity. So these guys get sexually mature at between 12 to 18 months of age. And since they are oviparous, so they lay eggs, they lay clutches, which consist of 2 eggs. Usually the females will lay their eggs every 4 to 6 weeks. With the hobby being what it is now, we have so many different types of morphs and color variations for these guys. Like, honestly, you can find them in colors like white, gray, brown, red, yellow, orange, and like many other colors that are starting to pop out in the community, which is awesome. So where do these guys come from? Well, they actually come from the southern third of Grande Terre. It's a small island found in New Caledonia, a small set of islands, just a couple hundred miles off the coast of Australia. So let's talk about a couple of cool facts about the gargoyle gecko. So these guys, when they hatch out, the babies are about an inch and a half in size or less, and they weigh about 3 grams in weight, which is actually crazy. Small little babies, very cute, very adorable. In their natural habitat, gargoyle geckos' biggest threat is actually humans and habitat loss. But aside from that, they are threatened by things like cats, dogs, rats, and other small rainforest animals. The estimated wild population of gargoyle geckos in the world is about 10,000. Much like most other New Caledonian geckos, the gargoyle gecko has a prehensile tail. So it's a tail that can easily wrap itself around a branch or limb so that in the wild they can use it to go from branch to branch or from plant to plant. So another cool thing about the gargoyle gecko, I guess you could say it's kind of cool. They have a defensive mechanism much like crested geckos, Leachianus geckos, and a lot of the other New Caledonian geckos. They have the ability to actually drop their tail, and what their tail does is it'll wiggle around on the floor like a worm, and it'll distract any sort of predator from trying to eat the actual gecko itself. But don't worry, because your gargoyle gecko will grow back its tail. Unlike crested geckos that drop their tail and they don't grow it back, these guys do actually grow their tail back. However, it will obviously look different than it did when it was not broken off, when it grows back. Alright, so now let's talk about caring for these animals. So they're actually wicked easy to care for. So let's start off with an enclosure. So enclosures for these guys, for a single adult, a 12 by 12 by 12 is a bare minimum for a single adult. Now, I usually keep my animals in something like this, so like a single adult I would keep inside of one of these. This is a 12 by 12 by 18, and it works perfectly for a single adult. Now, if you guys are trying to have more than one gargoyle gecko in the same enclosure at the same time, which is either a female and a female or a male and a female, never combine a male and a male together in the same enclosure. Something like a 12 by 12 by 18 for a single, and then something like a 24 by 24 by 36 would be great for a pair. Substrate for these guys, they do like it quite humid, so I would suggest you guys go with something like peat moss or a combination of sphagnum moss and cocoa fiber, because that stuff will really retain humidity very well for a long period of time without causing any issues. These guys do love having lots of things to climb and hide in, so I suggest adding things like vines, different types of shelters, either cork tubes or little half rounds, or even little stone caves work as well. For this guy, I actually gave him a coconut husk, like a big old kind of like coconut with a hole in it. And I also gave him a rock hide as well, so he has the option to choose between whichever one he wants. Let's talk about lighting, heating, and humidity. So lighting, these guys don't need anything specialized. However, it is always beneficial to give your animals UVB on a daily basis. So if you can afford to continuously buy UVB bulbs for your New Caledonian geckos, that is fine. That's great. I love it. Good on you. If you can't, that's perfectly fine. It's not an issue. For heating for these guys have a very strict heat regimen. So I like to keep their enclosure at a cool side of about 70 degrees. And the hottest spot that is in the enclosure is about probably like 78 to 80 degrees, not even. They don't really need a lot of humidity to be able, or not humidity, they don't really need a lot of heat to be able to process their food very well. So these guys actually do pretty well at room temperature, which is great for most keepers, saves you money on electricity costs and stuff like that. So they are very economical to have as a pet, which is awesome. Love it. But anyways, last but not least, let's talk about the humidity. So the humidity is kind of between, I'd say about 50 to 70. It comes down to what season it is in New Caledonia. So you got to kind of like gauge the rainy seasons and have a more humid enclosure during the rainy seasons, or you can just continuously have it somewhere between 60 and 70. I'm sure you'll be perfectly fine. Slightly higher humidity, not too high, we're not talking dart frog high humidity, but we do want a good amount of humidity so that these guys can easily shed their skin off. In captivity, these guys actually do very well with a complete crested gecko diet and dusted insects, every 1 to 2 days. Anyways, guys, I'm Nick from Nick's Reptile World, and this is Curtis, and we are going to catch you guys later. Peace.